Can you hear me okay?
Yep, gotcha. We're
All
recording.
right. And welcome listeners to another COVID post-pandemic panorama Panda Bear edition. You know, all the pan options that we have. Edition of RVA Dirt's Municipal Mania.
Mania.
That's right. Heard here every Wednesday at 11 a.m. on WRIR-LP 97.3 FM Richmond Independent Radio.
Indeed it is.
Hello.
Part two.
Yes.
Part two of the Women's History Month Lady-led RVA Council edition of Municipal Mania. How exciting.
Yes, because we got a lot of ladies on council.
I know. Supermajority? What is that? What is
girls
that?
run the world.
That's right. Amazing. So yeah, it's Women's History Month. So of course, what a perfect opportunity to talk to some of these ladies out here that we admire doing all the work that they're doing. And we will just go ahead and let them introduce themselves. And I'll start with Stephanie Lynch. We'll go in district order.
There we go.
Hey, Stephanie Lynch, proudly representing the 5th district for the city of Richmond.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, I am a social worker by background. Got my start in direct practice. Went back, got my master's in social work administration and policy practice. Decided that instead of trying to save one baby at a time out of the river, I want to build a bridge and save them all. So I got involved in policy practice and decided to devote my career to creating systemic change and through policy and legislation. So I went and did a stint at Virginia Department of Social Services, worked in child welfare for a little bit, then worked out at the governor's office, got involved in healthcare, helping to implement the Affordable Care Act, and then went and worked in the General Assembly as the lobbyist and representative for Medicaid, worked on Medicaid expansion, getting addiction recovery treatment services, and a whole host of other kind of expansion efforts to make healthcare and mental health more affordable and accessible. And now I work for one of our largest behavioral health providers and disability providers in Virginia. And so being an advocate for all of those that don't necessarily have a voice at the table and a seat to sit down on, I feel it is my job to listen and to scoot and pull a chair up for them and to fight for those issues that impact our most vulnerable communities. So as a council person, I take that mission really seriously to heart. And I know my other colleagues do too. That's why we kick butt and get some pretty wonderful stuff done, because I think we all align really closely and where our passions are. So it's one of the things I love about our female dominated council group that we have this year. But love representing the 5th district. It's a beautiful and diverse and dynamic group and very compassionate group of constituents that allow me to pursue a lot of social justice issues and take a pretty bold stance on things. And it's through them that I can be a channel for their voices. So it's a really humbling and just amazing experience to be able to represent the 5th.
Thank you. Ellen? You're muted. You're muted, Ellen. There you go.
All right, good. Good evening, ladies. How are you? Everybody feeling well?
Yeah, welcome.
Family's doing well?
For the most part, it's crazy pants, but we're living.
I'm Ellen Robertson. I represent the 6th District on City Council. I've been on City Council for 17 years this past November. It has been a wonderful, exciting journey. It's a journey that is ongoing. There are always new challenges, new opportunities that present themselves. over the last 17 years. And 16, 17 years before coming on council, I have worked very aggressively in the community level, working on restoring communities to be decent places for families to live, raise their families. And I've lived in the city of Richmond for too many years to say. I will be turning 70 years old on the 28th of this month.
Are we birthday twins?
Hmm?
We're birthday twins.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How fabulous.
I'm
Wonderful.
42 on the 28th this year. So
All right.
happy
Wow.
early
All right.
birthday.
Yeah. to
Awesome.
both of
Happy
you.
birthday to you. Yeah.
Early birthday.
Yeah. That's awesome. So, you know, I've served on city council since 2003. I did a lot of housing development work before I came on city council. Worked in my community that I still live, Howland Park. Started a nonprofit organization. We assisted 300 families to become first-time home buyers by actually going to HUD and getting HUD to allow us to use federal funds for down payment assistance and closing costs. Assisted another roughly 1,000 people that were current homeowners to fix their porches, put new roofs on their homes, make essential repairs. I also have worked for Home, a fair housing agency. I learned about what discrimination really is by actually being a tester and going out and realized that I was actually discriminated against. The white tester that went out and told the same story with the same income that I did came back with a totally different story. And it was such an eye-opening for me to experience discrimination. I also experienced discrimination once before. I used to be the nurse for what used to be FFE. I did nursing before I went into housing development and then ultimately to city council. And one day I had some of the workers at the plant to tell me as a nurse that we needed to do more training on the floors for CPR because people were getting injured and people were having heart attacks and so forth, but there was no one with first aid experience or knew how to do CPR. And so I went to my boss and I said, you know, let's set up a training class for CPR. And he said, we can't do that. And I said, why? Now I'm talking, 65, 67, something like that, maybe a little bit later. He said, nobody is going to want to do CPR. No white person wants a black person giving them CPR. Okay? And we can't risk the chance that would happen. And I said to him, I was so taken by that. I said, if you're dying, who cares? And he said, Ellen, forget it. It'll never happen. And one other incident I experienced when I was a student at VCU working on my degree in urban studies and planning, that I came face to face with discrimination again. And not only discrimination, but racism. And so one of the things that I realized in my career of serving, that the illness of discrimination and racism is a really powerful illness. And it's killing a lot of us in so many ways. It kills us from an economic perspective. It robs us of decent health. It robs us of opportunities to be all that we can be. And we need to, so I fight real hard all the time to help us to realize that we have enough resources. We do. We have enough resources. This is a rich country that there's no reason for no one to do without, except that there are some of us that honestly don't think that there's enough resources for everybody to have and live a decent quality life. And so my work from the time that I have been in the business, from the time that I stood at the bedside in cardiac intensive care units and neurosurgery intensive care units, where I fought for every student, every patient to be given the same quality of care, that Black patients weren't assigned to Black nurses only, and that Black nurse had, 10 patients to someone else wanted to. I have stood on the front line, not just because it's wrong, and not just because I'm an African American woman, and not just because African Americans have suffered greater, and there are others as well. I think of the Native Indians there and what we have done to that people, and we still do to that people. Not just because of those people, but because of the injustice and the racism that we deal with on a daily basis, how it robs us as a society of the beauty and the benefits of how we are wonderfully made and what we have to give and share, and how we are constantly depriving ourselves of it. And so my goal is to get self out of the way, all of us, to get self out of the way, and to be able to think bigger than self, and to continue to do the great work that is currently being done on City Council. I am grateful that we've got a great council right now. We really do have a great council. We've got people that talk to each other. We've got people that don't have an issue with saying, that's a great idea, but you're not being inclusive of all the council members when you have this discussion. It's not about me being the queen bee of something. It's about the city of Richmond, and collectively, how we share our talents, how we put all of our talents on the table, and we consider all of our talents as one talent combined together for the good of Richmond. And this is a great council. And I am very excited and pleased by the opportunity that we are going to demonstrate to Richmond in such a huge way what collaboration is all about. And they will also see that we have faith in each other, we trust each other, we're willing to work hard together, and we're willing, and we will make sure that every one of us play a major role and a major part in everything that we do moving forward. So stuff is gonna heat up. Y'all get ready. It's gonna be an exciting year, a very exciting year. And I thank you for this opportunity.
We're looking forward to it. We really are, as usual. So up next,
Yes.
last but certainly not least in introductions.
Thank you. Francesca, Melissa, thank you so much for inviting us. And certainly to my colleagues, I have to echo Ellen's last comment about this being an extraordinary councilmatic body, majority women whose voices will be brought to bear to really improve outcomes for Richmonders across a variety of domains that are critical to the health and well-being of our city. So my name is Cynthia Newbille. I probably didn't say that yet. And I am honored to represent the 7th District East End community. I come to my position on City Council as a public servant leader. That is born out of my lived and life experience growing up in this community. I grew up in our East End community, and one of what we refer to as the Big Six, Wickham Court Public Housing Community. I attended Richmond Public Schools. My elementary school is no longer standing. My middle school was referred to as Mosby, now MLK. And my old high school is no longer there, but it's made way for housing in the East End, which is really exciting. I had the opportunity to go away and come back home go away to school, come back home, et cetera. And my work experience has involved working in local, regional, and national nonprofits, working with local government, working with academia, all of those experiences allowed me to really fully, my lived experience as well as those work and academic experiences, to really fully understand the magnitude and scope of the challenges, historical, generational, and current before residents of our city. And I must say, because of that understanding, really probably exasperating the sense of urgency that I felt and feel to really work collaboratively and collectively to improve outcomes for all Richmonders, but certainly especially those who are most vulnerable and disproportionately impacted. And so I'm equally as excited as Councilwoman Robertson and Councilwoman Lynch to lean in and work collaboratively and collectively for the greater good. I came to council not seeking political office at all, but seeking to get to that front end. So there is the scenario that's referenced, you're pulling the babies out of the river, then someone goes midstream to get some help. My thing was, can we go upstream to determine why we have so many in the river to start with, and then work to look at the systemic policy priorities and funding allocations that would change that scenario. And so I am absolutely committed to that work and that effort with my two colleagues here and the other who are not here, who you've had an opportunity to talk to. It is, now is the time, and we are the ones we've been waiting for.
I love that sentiment. Great way to end that. Yeah.
Thank you.
And we definitely are looking forward to it, right, Fran?
Yes, yes. We need the change.
Yeah.
Yesterday.
Yeah. And we're the change that we're seeking. This collaborative effort on the part of this body, there is not one woman on our council body who's not absolutely and unequivocally committed to improving outcomes for Richmonders, certainly starting, so I'm excited about where we are. I also have a sense of urgency, but I am just so thrilled to have colleagues who are equally as committed to working collaboratively and collectively to address the challenges before us. I'll stop there because we'll probably just run on.
Well, I mean, all three of you ladies, really your backgrounds, your lived experience really feeds into, the papers you put forward, the legislation you push. And it really is something that is tangible. You can see it and feel it, and it, and that you're committed to it. And so kudos, congratulations, and happy Women's History Month.
Thank you. Same to the two of you. Let me say that. You all are phenomenal young women who have brought voice and given voice. And so that's not to be underestimated or ignored from my perspective. And so I'm very appreciative of all that you have and will continue to do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate that. We appreciate
We all agree.
Yes, I think we do.
I remember the first time I had an interview with you guys, I was like, oh my goodness, I was nervous. I said, they're going to beat me up, and it was just so pleasant. And so I really remember, I was like, wait a minute, what am I getting myself into? It's perfect.
It's a little bit of a different persona for us on Twitter. Because we're right in the thick of council meetings, and we're like, what the heck are y'all doing? But here, it's a chance for us to get to know each other and relax, and and we have spoken with each other multiple times now.
Yes.
And so there's a feeling of comfort, and we appreciate that you feel comfortable speaking with us as well. It really, especially women and feminine identifying folks, it's important for us to band together and show our power, I think. Fran, what do you think?
Yeah, I like that that you said that, because a lot of people, and we were actually having that conversation right before we started recording with Stephanie. She said, I can't remember how we got started, but I said, yeah, a lot of politicians, for whatever reason, they're afraid of us because they think we're gonna eat the babies or something. And
Delicious.
Like, yeah,
how we maintain our
mafia style, y'all are political mafia, and it's like, no, I promise. Like, if people do what they say they're gonna do, they don't get the drag. They don't get the drag. The drag is a lot more fun, but if people do what they're supposed to do, we just get to be friends, and we don't have to do the drag, right? But that's it, and a part, there's so much, it's painful that that politics has to be that way. But the reason that we started doing this, and that'll bring us right into our conversation, the reason that we started doing this was because we realized that there was a need for transparency and there was a need for voice, especially in this. And this was a space that was dominated by males. And when we started, Melissa will speak to this, we had so many voices, a lot of male voices that said, those girls are stupid. You guys don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're talking about.
You didn't earn your access to tweet about city council.
Yes, you didn't earn your access. And what was wild, for one, you didn't earn your access to tweet. And I wanted to choke the person with my phone, first of all. But what tickled me was, these are people these are males, in media that were saying these things, but you literally don't know me, because I've been registering voters in the state of Virginia for several years and have been in the streets in the background of Richmond politics in Virginia, not just Richmond politics, and I think that's the part that a lot of Richmonders don't know, but I don't just do Richmond politics. I'm heavily involved in state legislature and Virginia politics, and have been doing Virginia politics, and still heavily involved across the Commonwealth within politics still. And you would tell me that I don't deserve the space that I occupy, and I don't have the know-how or the skill to be in the circles that I'm in. Like, you clearly don't even know who I am, because and it's like, I'm like, Google me, baby. Like, what's wrong with you? Like,
right? Google's free.
And I'm not out here trying to really be out here like that, but you don't even know who the hell you talking to, sir.
Oh my God.
Well, what's funny is that none of those males are still around.
Really?
Reporting on council at the level that we're doing. They all dropped.
They're not reporting on anything. They've all pivoted to something else. They've all really pivoted to something else, because people don't really understand the longevity and the work it takes, the hours and hours it takes. And it's, politics is not something, it's a demon of its own, because, especially for women, and it's something else. A lot of people would not wake up and be, do the things that they do. Institutions would not be what they are. Businesses would not be where they are. A lot of y'all would not wake up with the clean noses and the clean clothes that you have on where you are today without the women that are behind you doing the things that they're doing, right?
Absolutely.
And to have folks tell people, women can't walk and chew gum at the same time. And so when I have somebody come to me and tell me that women in politics, this isn't where you fit, no, have you not looked around? Look at how far women have really pushed in politics, and not to discredit that, but especially in the Democratic Party for Black women, that just kills me to have people tell me yo, you don't fit in this space. Like,
Mhm.
the hell you been? Like, which narrative have you been? Which chapter of the book are you
Yeah.
on? Because
Yeah.
we're clearly in the wrong book. And it always tickles me because it'll be those same people or people from, you know, that same political tree that will end up coming back to me for consult work. And it's like, but I thought you didn't want.
I know, right? Of course.
You know, I thought you didn't. You know, I thought I didn't belong, bruh. You know, I thought you didn't need me, sir. And so it always tickles me, but it's something. It's very interesting, and so I revel in the understanding that women. I think when we get to the point where we understand just how powerful we really are, and how resilient we really are as a gift to the other things that exist around us, right? And we know this, but when they know it, right, and when they understand it, we gonna move some stuff, and it's that's the true beauty in it for me, is just how much I can accomplish in a day, in a month, in a year, when my husband, and I'm happy to have one that doesn't stand in my way. He doesn't stand in my way. He kind of lets me do all of the crazy things that I tell him are gonna happen. He's like, right. But he's learned at this point, like, it's not even worth it's not even worth
not have partners like that, I swear, because like this group of women right here, nobody is going to be telling them.
Yeah,
what they
he's
should
like,
be
it's
doing.
not worth it. It's not worth it.
Yeah,
It's not
pretty
even
much.
worth it. Yeah, it ain't worth it. Go ahead and do it. When should I show up? When should I show up?
Oh my gosh.
And it's so important. And I think in politics, it's very interesting because it's such a male dominated sphere. And most of the things that I do, I'm trying to just think, except for the floral business, which I love. That's my gift of love. But all the other businesses that I've and I'm still industries that I'm still involved in are still male dominated. And it's very interesting. Like, it's I don't know. We have to be very, very motivated to make this thing work. And I love that we're just resilient in such a way. We just don't take no for an answer. I love that.
I absolutely agree. Yeah.
So speaking of, the obstacles that we run up on, when you said, I'm going to enter politics, you were like, okay, this is it. I'm running for city council. Were you daunted? Did you run up against any brick walls, things that kind of shook you, thought they were going to knock you down? Anybody can jump in.
So for me, for me, it wasn't an issue of really looking to get into politics as much as into, again, a position that would allow me to have greater impact. So this is about service and servant leadership. Now, learning the politic of it to be a good advocate for my community and for my city becomes critical. But I mean, I came to it with that from that perspective, and I remain absolutely and unequivocally committed to that. That's where I am. That's why I'm here. Some of what you talked about, Francesca, I've certainly met in my first run for council. There were 5 other people and me. And so a lot of what I heard wasn't dissimilar from what I heard growing up in Whitcomb Court, being underestimated, dismissed, not going to go on, all those kind of things. But being absolutely clear and undaunted in my desire and commitment to serve in a community that I love, in a city that I love, allowed me to go forward. without reservation or hesitation. I mean, many of the same experiences. I can't, too many to even just tell. I mean, so from the run and what people said, from my lived experience. So I already had a sense of, where and what, and being dismissed and being taken for granted. So that, I was prepped from growing up, but certainly met even more of that on the trail as I looked to, at that time, now Delegate McQuinn was the person who was representing our district. And as she moved over, that presented the opportunity to be able to serve in this capacity. So yeah, I'm not sure, I may have veered off course in terms of the discussion, but have definitely had any number of experiences from when I ran, and comments and feedback from persons to once being in the office and having and interacting with folks who will often underestimate, almost love being underestimated, because then, folks are a little shocked and taking them like, okay.
That's the best. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. And, some of the times I remember being asked to speak at an event, and afterwards the person thought they were really complimenting me when they said, "You speak so well." And I'm like, in
comparison
fortunate, I don't have, profanity in my arsenal, really, but I did acquire a couple of words that are in the Bible that, when I string those two together, they can sound a little impressive, but I didn't even use those. I was cool. Cool. I'm like,
I got your dose. I got them.
Yeah, thank you. But I mean, it is just incredible. I mean, and I don't mean like 10, 15 years ago, and people think they're complimenting, and still yet to be underestimated in a room full of folks who I'm still having to, be clear about voice and represent, in the context of discussion, as if, oh, like, excuse me. Let's all be a part of it. So I think I veered off a little bit, Melissa.
No,
okay.
No.
All right. I'll put a pin there and let my colleagues get in here.
This is where the conversation takes you sort of show,
Okay.
We're talking about your lived experience and
from, just going, so as a Black woman in America, just going shopping. Now you want to see, get a lot of assistance at the door almost. It's like, well, wait, I didn't even get in here yet to go to a section right. So in a number of experiences that from growing up in my community to just different places that I've had the opportunity to work and to attend school, have gotten to, Francesca, what you mentioned, that we are resilient. And I'm saying in spite of, I stand on the shoulders of great women in this country, first in my community, in my city, and in my country. And I will not give up, I will not give in, and we're not giving out. Because I came to this for a different reason than, I wasn't seeking higher office, this particular reason to serve this community, this city. And I take that seriously and undaunted, leaning in. And the good news, I have colleagues with whom now that, like I said, that are similarly committed. So I'm gonna be quiet so my colleagues can weigh in before people have to jump off.
Who's next?
Stephanie, I'm gonna yield to you, sister, and I'll pick it up.
Yeah, I, like Cynthia, had no, well, you all remember because it was only like 2 short years ago. So you remember my race, but I had absolutely, I mean, if somebody would have said to me, 5 years ago, even, yeah, you're going to be on city council, I would have said, laughing.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And I really, to be honest, I really didn't think of it as a political position because I'm like, it's local, it's so community oriented, it's local,
Exactly.
it's local office where you're making policy changes. Like you don't realize how much it's actually more political. And I think more, in some cases, there's more fodder than in the General Assembly, which is what I was kind of used to, or making policy change at the General Assembly level. And I mean, I got into this because being a macro social worker, being one to want to build a bridge, and Cynthia said, figure out the pieces of how to fix some of the system. I wanted nothing more than to try and bring that impact to the city of Richmond, and any time, treasure, energy, emotion I could dedicate to helping fix some of the issues that I had seen working directly with our population that we're still seeing, that I'm still experiencing, that all of us are still hearing every day. I mean, that's the rewarding stuff. But politics and personalities are everywhere. And when you are trying to make change, that's often what gets in the way of doing stuff and getting stuff done. And what's been really hard for me as a woman is, and I'm the first woman in the seat to be in the 5th district. I think that, and I bet my colleagues on the line here would share in this experience. I think that I could probably have the most brilliant idea or have a solution already on the table tied up in a bow, but because it's coming from this package, it ain't gonna get heard. And that's kind of what frustrates me so often is, kind of like, hey, you feel like Willy Wonka blowing the flute as Baruch falls into the chocolate river. Like, don't go into the chocolate river. And no one listens to you. And then you have to call the Oompa Loompas out and play cleanup on aisle 8. And that's kind of what being a woman in politics or policy making feels like sometimes. Yeah. Because sometimes you're just not heard. And so that probably for me would be one of the more frustrating things. And then the other, piece about, I think I would venture to say, actually, I'll call on a recent example is, there's something that happened recently with one of, with Cynthia. And I called her and I said, I just had this moment where I was like, if Cynthia was a man, that wouldn't have even been a thing. Like no one would even be commenting on this. And I remember calling Cynthia and saying, this is BS. And I support you. And like, if you were a man, you wouldn't be having to go through this. And she was like, yeah, no kidding. And Cynthia's for real. She does not curse ever. And I talk like a sailor. So oftentimes I'll be person on the phone with her. And I know that she wants to say, no, bleep, and probably pepper in a bunch of curse words, but she never does. But that day in particular, she almost cursed. So
one of the ones from the Bible.
They had made President mad.
It was oftentimes, and in that particular situation, it was I'll encapsulate it in the theme of people being very demanding of you and expecting you to be all things at once to all people and satisfy, especially men. Like if they don't get a meeting from you, or if they don't get a response from you right away, or if they don't hear what they want to hear from you, they are they react kind of violently. And in that particular instance with my colleague here, like I saw very clearly what was going on. And it happens to all of us. It happened to me this week, where as a woman, I think we're just the expectations and the level of appeasement that we're expected to live up to is much, much, much higher than our male colleagues. And our male colleagues have the freedom in the room to live outside of the box and not be held within an archetype. And all of us that are living in the patriarchy are confined and oppressed by the caricatures, the character archetypes that have been placed upon us by years.
The I'm every woman syndrome, like
the I'm every woman syndrome.
And you can't get right, and you can't get mad at anything, and everything must be handled with grace at all times. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, like you name it. Like there's, years worth of that type of imprint and schema that's been reinforced over and over again through media, through culture, through socialization, that one way or the other is imprinted upon us and causes us to have to live in these boxes. And if we step outside of that as women, as people of color, as anyone that's not a white hegemonic male, able-bodied, there's like a cognitive dissonance reaction that happens with people, and they get upset at you, and you become a witch and you get burned at the stake and stuff. So,
how dare you?
What happened?
Hateful woman.
So, female genocide, super real thing, happened for about 200 years, but still going on in some ways. But in any case, that's the thing, that's the phenomena that I see as a stark contrast between my male colleagues and my female colleagues on council. And the other thing that I think that we are all really good about, and I try to be, I try my best. And if I'm not, Ellen and Cynthia, please they can put me in my place. I always, I want them to, and I need them to. But the other thing is the generational differences that we have on council as women. And there is nothing that, with Ellen, when I hear people, say, like, if there is an affordable housing issue, I mean, I try publicly, I think we have to give reverence to and respect to the people that have been working and doing the work in the field for as long as they have. And, if people forget to acknowledge that, like, I'll try to bring that up. And I think our other colleagues are really good about that, is just giving shine where shine is due. And because if we don't lift each other up, I can tell you, nobody else will. So
yeah.
So ladies, I started this conversation off talking about discrimination and racism. And so I can say sexism as well. And I also started this conversation off by saying, when people are not sure of themselves and lack confidence in themselves as to who they are, they tend to look for ways to build their confidence by putting someone else down. And if they are intimidated by you, then they either be intimidated or they try to find a way to intimidate you or to shut you down. And, I've had that done to me by women as well as men, to be honest with you. I can recall some really horrible situations in jobs and environments that I've worked in that folk just seem to think that what is a woman's duty and place? And where do you get out of that place, right? And I remember very well my very first year, but before I ran for election, I must admit, guys, African-American men, for the most part, there's one exception or two, and probably more, but the African-American men that were in leadership position in the city of Richmond when I ran for city council for the first time in 2003. Those men were the men whose shoulders I stood on. Women as well, you know. McQuinn was around. There were other women that we know that were on council at the time were around, and they were all there. And they were not only there for me to stand on their shoulders, they put me on their shoulders, okay? They carried me places, right? And they carried me places that I didn't even know where I was going or what I was supposed to be doing. But I knew that if they were there in the room and someone asked me something or someone said something to me, they spoke up. You know, if another man was dishonorable and disrespectful for me, I've had African-American brothers that stand up straight up and tell them straight in the face, you're going to apologize to her. That's not the way we treat our women. And I'm proud of those African-American men and white men that have done the same thing. I'm proud of them. And I'm proud of, you know, like you said, for instance, that what your husband, he lets you do your thing. My husband lets me do my thing, you know. He steps in, he provides services, he knows what I need, he does it. Don't ask any questions about it. He'll work long hours to support that, to make that happen. But when it's time for Ellen to be doing her thing and he knows that I've got it, he don't mess with it at all. And it's beautiful. It really is beautiful. But that is confidence and knowing who you are, what you stand for in yourself, okay? I remember one of my first experiences on city council, I had to tell one of the white males on the city council when he basically wanted to put me in my place. I told him straight up, I said, listen, let me tell you something, dude. I put my pants on in the morning the same way you do. I said, and you know what? You want to mess with me? I'll go to the street and I'll get enough petitions to have your hind parts taken off of council. You know, that was the end of that.
Yes, hind part. Yes, hind parts.
You know, and so, you know, I think that's one thing that we are. Women are bold. We're brave. We can courageous. And when we see our sisters that aren't, we need to be the shoulders that we let them stand on and let them know that, you know, whether you bold or not right now, go on and be bold, sister, because I got you, you know, because we do need to be strong. And there's a lot of women's rights that we have been denied. There's no reason why we should be paid less than someone else in the same position. There's no reason why we shouldn't have rights as it relates to the things that are for our good health and for our good needs and so forth, that we can stand up and have equal rights for. And we have to do that, ladies. We have to do that because sometimes we know in our own bodies and the things that we experience and others experience and little girls experience, and little boys that are taken advantage of because they're little children, okay? We know how those things feel. You know, we know. And so it takes us, we have to be represented. When we see slates of people that serve on boards, you know, when I look at the boards of the city of Richmond and I look at how many women are on the board, how many men on the board, we often ask, is our district represented? That's important, but it's also important that there are the females, there are the different ethnic minorities that are represented there, and that we hear those voices, that those voices have to be heard. And if you're in a room, just like you're in this room, if you're in a room and women don't get that opportunity to speak up, you need to say, hey, I got something to say, but I want to make sure that Mary gets a chance to speak first and I'm going to follow her. You know, we've got to do those things. And boards, the important boards that exist and make great decisions. We have to form those party alignment, not party alignments, but representations And if necessary, create a new party if it needs to be done so that the representation is there. And so that's what we're here for. We're here to fight this battle. And we've got everything that we need to make that happen. And this kind of conversation is part of the process of us getting even stronger and having greater representation.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I concur.
These conversations have to happen.
Again, I really want to just thank you all because too often there is not the recognition of women in service. And I mean from community leaders like Ms. Annie Giles, who I had the honor and pleasure to work with, who said to me, oh, hey, don't care what you know till I know that you care. And that's to everybody going out. To elected officials, some of whom Ellen has mentioned, whether it's Willie Dell or Dolores Quinn, or I mean, there are a host of women whose shoulders we stand on. And I would be, I must, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention Irma Newbille, who taught me before, growing up as a little kid in Whitcomb Court, before there were words like collaborative partnership and collective impact and anchor institutions, through her behavior and practice in the community, I came to understand what it meant and how we could work collectively and collaboratively. This wasn't something I guessed about. This was something I saw in action. And I'll give you one example. You know, there was obviously full agreement among the folks who lived on our road that they wanted their children healthy, well-fed, and ready to learn when they went to school. They didn't have unlimited resources, but they would pool their resources. My mom had jam, one had bread, the other had powdered milk. Kids were gonna have a meal. One had cereal, one had milk, gonna have a meal. And I don't know where all those tacit agreements were. They weren't all codified, but they were absolutely agreed to. And she clearly was the anchor institution, because I mean, she, you know, I told someone once when she left out the house with the last jar, said, if we had a phone, I would have called somebody to report. But what she knew and what they had absolute agreement about and clarity about is how they could work collectively and collaboratively for the greater good. And so herself, I mean, and so many others, we stand on the shoulders of greatness. I mean, we could list them, and I just want to, again, thank you all, both of you, for your acknowledgement of council, but for the even greater acknowledgement of women in this city, in this Commonwealth, in this world, who are extraordinary and have really made this world the better place that it is.
When you talked, Cynthia, about, Wickham Court, I remember the first year that I ran for city council, or maybe after I was elected, and we had neighborhood watch night. Everybody would come out for that. And I was over there with Annie Giles and Miss Thompson.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm telling you, you're right. And this still happens. I mean, the children walk in the door, everybody knew everybody by name, knew every child's name. And if they needed a cup of sugar, they would give a child a cup and say, go over to Miss So-and-so house and get a cup of sugar. They would come back with a cup of sugar. Everybody was cooking, everybody put together there. And I mean, it was the best food and the best spirit of community that I experienced. And I mean, I would go around to all of the places, but I would make sure. And that's where I would probably end up spending almost the entire evening. And it was all about that community spirit. And when you look at the leadership, right today of the Richmond Redevelopment Housing Authority Tenant Association, women are leaders in this world. Women, regardless where they come from. And I'm glad you're mentioning your mother. I'm speak of my mother. My mother, absolutely amazing. She is so wise, and I learn something from her every time I'm in her presence. Just the wisdom that she has is just phenomenal. And so I think that, you know, the world knows, we know, we are essential. We are essential. And the sisterhood that we celebrate is something that we need to continue to build upon. And that's what you guys are doing for us in this, in having us on this, to celebrate and to build even stronger bonds of relationship for the good that we do to make this world a better place to live in. And, you know, I've known Cynthia before. She came on city council. I did not know my sister, Stephanie, but Stephanie is a real troop. She's a hard worker. She is. She's bold. She bold. She bold. Okay. She goes for it. She goes for it.
We're probably all a little guilty of that, but you know, yes.
But one thing that I love about her, and like she said, when people are talking about, and I know it, you know, I get a lot of, but you know, affordable housing is one of my, you know, I've carried that banner willingly. I inherit the banner and I will continue to carry it, but it's not my banner to carry alone. And when others, you know, one time I can remember we would say affordable housing on city council. The reason why I get the banner carrier is because it was Ellen all by herself. Now, everybody on the city council is saying affordable housing. And that's what we got to realize is that what we are given as a gift to carry, when it gets to a place that everybody else is lifting up that banner, we need to celebrate that. And we need to encourage everybody to carry that banner. We don't need to be concerned that I will lose my banner. I want to be and appreciate being acknowledged for the work that I'm doing and continue to do.
Absolutely.
But when others carry that banner as well, that's when you know that what is to be done will be done, because the will to do so has spread across the banner, across the entire council, across the administration, across the city of Richmond. We still got some places that we got to get through. There's still some gates that are still locked, okay? But if you got enough people carrying the banner, right? You got more of a better opportunity to get through those doors that still need to be open, and we will get there.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it any better. You know.
And Stephanie is on the bandwagon. The girlfriend, she's like, can I get some more of the banner? I want more of the banner. I want to carry part of the banner.
Yeah.
I'm like, let's burn it for us.
And we're like, yeah. Take it. Let's go.
And I think we all have components that you know, based on our areas of not just interest, but really seeing the challenges and how we address that. We all have a piece of that, and really making that quilt allows us to begin to address across the entire city footprint, not some, but all, the challenges before us, and us putting those squares together allows us to get there and to lean in. So I'm going to stop. There's probably a whole lot more, yes. But I do want to say one last piece. Okay. That growing up in my community, there was also, while there was actually collective and collaborative activity, there was also accountability. And folks all held us all accountable, the kids, the adults, people, you know, it was not, So we see the promise, you can't, all of it, and not just some, but all. And so, and that's some of what you mentioned, Ellen, in terms of community and that sense of community and working together. wasn't as if there weren't challenges, but let me just say, folk, you were held accountable, and that work allowed us to get to a place that had the kind of impact we're all looking for. Not, yeah. So yeah, we all got pieces of the banner. We're all in. Francesca, Melissa, did we go off course too much? I'm sorry.
No.
This was awesome. This was awesome. This was awesome. This is exactly.
So let me ask you guys. So, you know, one of the things that I do think that we face is a generation gap a little bit there.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was, 2021, I thought my parents were like, what are you kidding me, you know? And so now I think we've got, like Stephanie said, as it relates to we got a lot of nice young people on city council that are pioneering trails that they've never traveled before. I was one of those persons when I first came on council, and I was one of those persons when I started the nonprofit Housing Development Corporation in the city. I didn't know what a nail and a hammer was, much less trying to put together a proposal for building houses. And, you know, an older gentleman, Miss Milton's husband he ran a construction company, and we hired him to do the renovation on the first house. And he said to me, you want to run this nonprofit and you want to build houses, then you need to know how to build a house. And I'm saying, that's what I hired you for. You're the contract guy. He said, listen, you want to run this organization? He put me out there, put me on the ladder, took me up to the roof, put me on those pads on my knees, made me crawl underneath of the house. I'm the executive director. I hired him to be the contractor. He's got me out there.
Was that my dad?
He taught me.
Totally sounds like my dad.
Mine too. Mine was a contract.
Well, same birthday date. Who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah.
My dad telling you to get in the crawl space. It sounds
it sounds like Miss Thompson in my district. Yeah.
He did.
Uh-huh.
And so, that's, ladies, right now, I want to make sure that I'm doing my part to share what I have experienced and learned, that I'm sharing that with the new persons who's taken on that role, that I'm saying to them, there's the ladder, get on it, go up there. I'm going to stand down here. I'm going to hold it,
Got you if you fall,
back you up, but I want to put
generational knowledge is,
and
everything is priceless.
That's how we grow. That's really how we grow.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's something I've actually been, that's another one of my pet projects. And I'm looking for some of the funding to see how to make that come to fruition. And I'm still in the planning for it, but there are lots of candidates, schools and programs, right? And I say a lot facetiously because there are a few scattered around that put candidates out. And I'll be honest, they put candidates out, but they don't really do a great job because they don't really equip candidates truly for what candidates face when, especially women, and there are some that are geared towards women, but they don't acknowledge the challenges, the true challenges of the sphere that politics really is. And that's because we are still sugarcoating things, and we're still hoping that things, we're still guiding things, on the hope of Christmas past. This is how we love for politics to look, but that's not the reality of how politics really are right now. And so we can put you through this political course and tell you how we'd like you to run your campaign. But if you're running your campaign on a rule book based on the scope of how we would like things to run, and everyone else is running their campaign on this set of rule books, and then you wonder why you get left behind. That's why, because you're still running, you've been giving the rule book based on how the projection of the way we'd like things to go, but everyone else is still over here. And we're not being honest about how we're training our candidates, and we're actually setting up our newer classes of candidates still. And I think we actually had one recently, and I spoke with her, and she was very disappointed. She was running for delegate, and she said, you know, this seat I was running, I'm really disappointed because the seat I was running for, the General Assembly, is not obtainable to the everyday person. And that's because she ran, and it was put into her head that you could run this, and that was going to be something that she could do and still maintain her job. And that she could also do what she was doing and meet expectations and meet goals, and the fundraising goals were not given to her honestly and transparently. And so if you're not bringing to the table these fundraising goals, and you're not bringing to the table this, and the caucus is not going to come back and give you $50,000, you know, and so, or $10,000, or whatever that ask was for her personally. And so when those things don't happen, and then you feel like, I'm not getting what I need to compete, but again, that's because you've been sold a pipe dream that's really not a reality of the sense of, or the case that you're in. You've been set up for failure because the system that you're in is not the true reality of the system that you've been told you were walking into.
And that's really, and that's the reason why we need to take ownership of that. Because you know, the first time I ran, I never aspired to run for city council. Okay. The council person that was serving in the seat came to my office. I was running my nonprofit, building houses for moderate to low income families and putting them in their first home. Okay. Nobody else had done that in the city of Richmond. Nobody else had done that in the United States to find down payment and closing costs for first time home buyers. We started that initiative. I went to Washington and was able to get a senator that doesn't look like me, that I bought his aunt home from. And when I moved into Highland Park, because I fell in love with the house, right? And when I realized that I had moved into a community that had probably 50% of the houses in every block was in horrible shape, okay? I called him and I said, we're starting this nonprofit and we're gonna fix this community, and I want you to help me, because you know what? You should have told me that you were selling me your aunt's home in a neighborhood that was run down. And that the reason why it was run down was because of redlining and disinvestment when African-American families moved in. I said, you should have told me that. Now I want you to tell HUD that we're going to use federal dollars for the first time to help families. Our families become homeowners in this community. And I want you to tell HUD that you're going to use us as a pilot, because you should have never sold me that house in this neighborhood in the condition that this community was in. Now I need for you to go across the street and tell HUD that we need money to fix this community up. And he said, okay, I'll do it. And he did. That, and then when I ran, when I was asked to run, you know, one of the council members came to my office one day and he said, Ellen, I need for you to plan to run for city council. I said, what? Where'd I come from? I'm here, I'm doing my thing here, and things are running well, I'm good. He said, no, I need you to prepare to run for city council. I was just in knots because I was like, what in the world? I don't know anything about doing that. But this was a man, one of our colleagues on council, one of our former council members that asked me to run. But it was Dolores McQuinn, it was Baskerville, it was friends of mine in the housing community. And Dr. Newbille was a part of that group that rallied around and said, look, okay, fine, if you're going to do it, and when I got peace from God, that's what I was going to do, because I won't take no man's recommendation, okay? I said, I'll be up there crying publicly and feelings hurt and all kinds of stuff. And when I got peace from God, and my sisters, they were the ones who surrounded me and say, listen, if you're going to run, you got to raise this amount of money. Here's a list of people that we're going to ask to give you $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, and made a long list of people that we were going to ask. Folk I didn't even know. Okay, This is what your literature has got to say. These are the kinds of things that you got to do. And I still run my campaigns the same way, and I've never come close to losing the campaign. I've always won by great margin, and it does depend a lot on how do you run a campaign. But we need to be able to transfer that knowledge to younger people that are interested. And I was one of those young people, but I listened to those folk above me that told me what I needed to do. And when they tell me that you got to wear out the shoe leather on your shoes, don't get tired, get up and go, and they literally would count my votes every day. How many people you got to vote for you today? If I didn't meet my threshold,
you didn't work hard. You got to go back. Right. And that's the thing. And I think that's such a big piece of it. And I think that's the piece for me that I've been really toying with and thinking about, because we definitely need a lot of work in campaign finance reform. And that's a big piece of it for me. But it's also about being realistic when we're talking about what it takes to reach the constituency, and what is important when you're talking about reaching the constituency, and why we've led ourselves to believe it costs the level of money that it does to run a campaign. And that's because we've bought into all of these things, right? And that's why we have, what happened to Gina, because that machine has just, it's a mess. And so I really want to be able to propel the next generation of young politicians that are able and ready-bodied for politics, but are also aware that you can't change politics from the outside. It has to be changed from within. And so in order for us to change it from within, you have to be in it. And so we have to get in it, and we have to reshape it. And in order for us to do that, we have to hold space in it. And that's something that it's very hard for people to wrap their minds around. That was something that I struggled to explain to people when this summer, as we start to close, we'll kind of end on that note, but people were talking about the difference, the argument of, defunding the police and reformatting that argument. And I said, well, hold, before y'all get to jumping down my throat about this, hold on, because I think we have a messaging issue. We all can agree we have a policing problem, and I think we all can believe that this is a problem that we have. But for us to, anyone that understands how education works and how reformatting and restructuring anything, whether it's a business, whether it's an institution, whether it's a group of people, whether it's a council, whatever it is. When you go to do something, to restructure something, re-educate something, it typically doesn't cost less money to do that. It typically costs more money to do that, because you have to reinvest and relearn, re-educate, reformat, restructure. When we had, and if you look at the examples of police departments across the country that actually fired all of their officers and then rehired them to go through different training, and they did these different programs, it actually costs more money. And so when we look at the understanding of defunding these things, you have to really break down what that messaging means, because that doesn't mean you strip a department of the money, because if you think they're acting up now and they're not treating us fairly, take away their money and see what see how they act and see what they do on the streets. They really gonna act a fool. You know, that's what we don't need. You know, and so it costs more money to re-educate people, institutions, programs, what have you, to relearn. Even when you scrap a whole department and it takes money, more money, to reformat whatever the case may be. And I think people just don't, these are very sensible processes, but they don't resonate when emotional things are moving, right? So it takes time to go work through these things, and I'm very pragmatic when it comes to, we need to find solutions to look through it. And so, you know,
that's great. No, that's excellent.
It's a process. We'll get there, but it's I always say, when something is getting solved and we're getting through a problem, there's a woman behind it. There's a woman behind it. So I've actually been thinking about that. Yeah, how we can help the next generation of politicians and what that looks like, because we are setting a lot of our next generation of politicians up for disappointment, because we're telling them one thing, and we want this great shiny new unicorn of politics to work, but it's never going to work unless we find enough people to restructure it from the inside out. And we can paint a horse all the colors we want to paint it, right? But it's still
a horse.
Still a horse. And so, you know, anywho, but ladies, this conversation has been, we've gone well over an hour, but it's fine. I love it. Melissa, I told Melissa, go ahead and spin off. I'd close out for us, but thank you all so much for coming on today. We really appreciate all of the hard work that you guys put in on and off the clock, because the clock never stops when you're on. It never stops, and we know that. We know that as an extension of following you guys and you ladies, and you know, reporting on it. I'm midway through my budget analysis of 700 pages myself, you know, and it's quite the job. And so we are appreciative, and we know that constituents nearly don't share that enough, and so it's important to hear it, and to give you your flowers while you live. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you
for that, you know, and to atone for that as well, one of my favorite city community activist, community leader, she's no longer with us, but in the essence of that, for Women's History Month, as Lily, as to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us. And we will have our closing now. Richmond, you know what time it is. Flint still has dirty water now, so does New Jersey, and Petersburg does too. So we might need to work on that because we don't need that coming down the pipe across the river to Richmond. So we need to help our brothers and sisters in Petersburg figure out what that's about.
Wow.
Thank you.
RPS was fully funded last year, and hopefully we'll work on this budget here and we will have RPS fully funded this year to infinity and beyond, Buzz Lightyear style, because we need it. The kids need to go back to school at some point, whether it's year round, 6 months, 3 months, 5 months, 6 months, whatever it is, they need to go back to school so the kids can get some educations and reading, writing, arithmetic. They need that. So we need it. So yes, we need to get kids back in school and we need RPS fully funded so they can get back into these brand new schools that they have waiting for them to re-enter. Yeah.
Would have loved to go a little earlier on the 10-month calendar, but unfortunately that's not the way that cookie crumbled, is it?
Nope, but that's okay.
We'll get there. We'll get there. We'll get there.
We're gonna figure it out. We'll get there. We'll get there. And as per usual, I know it, you know it, we all know it together, but we're working on it. Richmond is most certainly still racist, but we're working on it one day at a time. Thank you, listeners, for joining us, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Have a great evening.
Bye.